Well, good morning. Welcome to another week of my allotment. Another lovely early morning. Not going to be as hot and as sunny today. The weather's taken a cooler turn, and as I'm not going to be able to get up here for the next week, that is to my advantage, I think. So yeah, that's inevitable in May. That it's not all about hot weather. You also have to deal with the more inclement and cooler weather. But anyway, I've got a whole day up here as the sun rises. Well, it's exactly 5:30, so not sure how long I'll be up here, but lots to do. I've made a real effort to empty the greenhouse, and I've set the greenhouse up now pretty much how it's going to be for the summer, with the tomatoes, the cucumbers, the peppers, and I've inevitably still got some more seeds coming on in there. Lots more beans, runner beans, French climbing beans. But today is really about me setting the allotment up ready for for the next week when I can't get here. So yeah, I've got tomatoes. The tomatoes that I haven't put in the greenhouse, and I've put some in the raised bed also at home, outside, I'm going to put up here outside. They're all cordons that can be grown outside, and they are all allegedly blight resistant, so that'll be interesting to see how that goes. I've got my first round of sweet corn to go in, and then all sorts of other little bits and pieces. I might try and get some French climbing beans in, we'll see. But yeah, lots to do, a bit of watering to do, and I'll talk more about that in a minute, about the watering. Watering's quite a complex issue. It shouldn't be, I'm sure, but it does seem to be a bit complicated in my mind. Anyway, I've just got up here. I've emptied the van of all my stuff. It's all ready to go in the ground. Some more leeks to go in. I've had a few leeks nipped off. I mean, that's inevitable, I suppose. It's got to be the birds, because although I see rabbits around here, they don't climb over this little low wire, chicken wire fence I've put around all the beds, because I don't see any droppings inside. So I know it's not the rabbits, it's got to be the birds. But anyway, you know, I mean, I've got lots of leeks and I've got lots of spares, so I'm not too worried about the odd leek being nipped off. And I'm going to plant the ones I've brought up extra to the sort of 150 I've already got in. So we won't go short of leeks over the next coming season. So yeah, but before we do anything else, you know me by now, cup of tea time. Let's get that kettle on. This is a quick overview of actually what I've got to get in the ground still. So a couple of lettuces, some French climbing beans, more red cabbage, celery, runner beans, red cabbage, some Lollo Rosso lettuce. Over here I've got my Russian giant sunflowers, sweet corn, tomatoes, beetroot, leeks, some Swiss chard that I've grown from seed. Well, that's got to go in and find a home. Less importantly, I've got some cosmos there, the next lot of multi-sown radish. And then the other main cold frames are all empty now. But here I've got some courgettes I haven't got a home for. I've got some sort of squash there that for some reason I haven't labelled it, so I've no idea what they are. Answers on a postcard, please. And then some rather tired looking spring onions and beetroot. And you would think with 2 and a bit allotments that I'd have lots of space to put all that lot in, but I'm struggling. You know, it's really important that everything has ample space. It's no good crowding things in, but yeah, I've got to try and squeeze some of that in somewhere, because after sowing it, growing it, nurturing it, watering it, transporting it, it'd be a shame for it all to wither and die and never having got its feet in the soil. So yeah, a slight problem. Where do I put it all? It's a nice problem to have, mind. Anyway, I can smell my tea as I walk past it. I thought I'd give you a little bit of a different perspective. Do you know, it's come to my attention that allotments are a little bit like babies. When you haven't got one, you're not interested in other people's. Then when you get an allotment, you say to yourself, what the hell did I do before I had one? We found that with our kids, they were all consuming, and you thought, you know, all that spare time I had before I had children. And it's the same with an allotment, and it's not a complaint, I love it. But it consumes time. It consumes a lot of things. It consumes a lot of effort, a lot of thought. It gives more than it takes, but it does take over a lot of time, and you think, I must have had a lot of spare time before I had these 2 and a bit allotments. And of course I must have. Anyway, it's not a complaint, it's just an observation. But yeah, just like babies, what the hell did I do before I had one? The other thing that's occupied my mind, and you know, my mind's not that active, but watering. I have come up, you know, when I finish work, I get up here and we haven't had a proper good downfall of rain now for weeks. And so when I get up here, most of the time I'm up here for the brief hour or 2 at the end of work, occasionally, I spend ferrying to and fro with my watering cans. And I'm watering frantically. And Bridget, who's now got a plot quite close to mine now, stopped me the other day and commented on that. So we chatted about it. And I've said before on a previous video that Bridget, not only has she been here since the beginning of these allotments, but she's very knowledgeable. She doesn't force it on you, but the knowledge is there if you want it. And of course you would be a fool not to take it. But she mentioned that, and I've thought about this before, that actually sometimes watering plants repeatedly can be counterproductive, especially if you're not getting the water down deep, which when the ground is dust dry is very difficult to do. What you're doing is encouraging the roots to stay near the surface, because that's where you're putting the water, which in turn encourages weak plants. And I've noticed, especially with my butternut squash, that the plants don't look good. Now, inevitably, when you put them out, you know, they're going to have a bit of a shock. So you can expect a bit of a lull in their performance before they pick up and grow away. But some of my stuff isn't looking good, and I wonder, having spoke to Bridget about it, whether it is that I am simply watering stuff too much. A chap put some cabbages and garden peas in about 6 weeks ago, and he left and he's never been back, and he's never watered them. And the people who've adopted them now, because they're on a different plot, they've never watered them. So those garden peas and cabbages have barely had a drop of water. We had 2 days drizzle last week, and yet they could not look healthier. And that leads me to believe that what Bridget said and what I suspected is correct, that generally when you put a plant from a pot into the ground, it needs a good drink. Thereafter, if I can resist it, I should stop this constant watering. And Bridget mentioned, and I am aware of it, that you know, if you stick your finger in the soil next to the plant, if when you plunge your finger in, you can feel it moist or damp, then the plant's getting water. It doesn't have to be lying in a puddle for it to be taking water up. And the fact that it's having to work to draw that water up means that the plant, it's just like a human muscle, or the brain. The harder you have to work it, the stronger it gets. So I think, you know, with not being able to get up here for the next 6 or 7 days, that will fall into that plan. But I think I'm going to ease off the watering. We'll see how that goes, and I shall let you know. It's my favourite morning on my favourite day in my favourite place. And I've got my favourite brew. What more can a chap want? Life is good. In this bed here I've got some dwarf French beans, and around the edge, which I don't think the camera will pick up, is a single row of leeks. I've just alluded to the fact that I've had this problem with where to put stuff. So I thought I'd just use this bit of space that isn't used for potatoes for French climbing beans, and I put a row of leeks around the edge. I've now compounded that problem of where to put stuff by growing more leeks. And so what I've done now is, with my magic dibber, I've dibbed in about another 40 leeks and made a zigzag alternate double row. I think I'm probably going to regret that in the future, because I've put them so close that I won't be able to get the hoe between them, but I'll just have to put up with that, because I'd rather have a few weeds and more leeks. So we'll see how that goes, but they've all been put in, and I'm going to water them in now. It's occurred to me while I'm doing that, another thought for the day. I've just spent about half an hour, 45 minutes hoeing, and I said to you on a previous video that it's one of the few things that I think you can do little and do often, and I'm not so sure, because I hoe every time I come up here. I've just spent half an hour or more doing it, and I need at least another hour to get round between all the crops, and because the weeds are growing prolifically now. Yeah, I don't think that works either, doing little and do it often. I think the mantra should be do a lot and do it as often as you can. You don't have to, you know, wake up at night in a cold sweat over it, but whenever you're up here, the hoeing has to take some kind of priority. So I've done a bit, and I'll do a bit more. So, and the other thing that occurred to me is vegetables. I said the analogy of babies and allotments, and I'd like to use another analogy, and that is that growing vegetables is like chopping firewood. We've got a wood burning stove at home, and that stove keeps my wife warm all evening through the winter, but it keeps me warm a lot more. I have to chop the wood, cut it into sections, transport it home, chop it into the proper logs that we need, stack it, and then bring it in the house. So it's warming me a lot more. I get much more benefit from it, although I don't very often sit in front of the actual fire. And it's the same with vegetables. We both eat them. In fact, we only eat fruits and vegetables. We don't eat anything that comes from an animal. And, you know, that's a separate issue, which I'm not going to talk about. But these vegetables keep me healthy so much more than just eating them. It occupies my mind, it thrills me, it gives me therapy. Not that I don't think I need therapy, but if I needed it, this is it. I certainly wouldn't sit in an office with a chap with a clipboard. You don't need that, you need this. You need dirt under your fingernails. So it keeps my mind healthy, and it keeps my body healthy in so many ways. I spend hours up here. I get a good night's sleep every night because of the hard work. I have no sleep issues. The only issue I have is getting up in the morning, and I don't have a problem with that, as you can see. So it's so good for you. It's so good for you. I don't know why more people aren't doing it. How are people not queuing round the block? How are people laying their gardens to concrete and tarmac when under that tarmac is the solution to all their problems? And people for generations knew it, and we've lost it. Yeah, that's my thoughts on the subject. But enough thinking. It's been 35 minutes since I had a brew, and I think that's way too long. So let's go and put the kettle on. And this little bit of space here, I'm going to squeeze some tomatoes in. And I'll do that after my brew. But before I put the kettle on, I need to water and puddle in these leeks. Here we go. Best sound on the allotment. Go on, you beauty. Did you notice how clean that mug was? best drink of the day. I'm sat here puzzling about my strawberries. There's green strawberries now, and I can't get up here for the next week, so I think I need to net them. You know, you've got to be able to let the pollinators in, that's the trouble. The bees have got to get in to pollinate, but I think that's mostly done. So, yeah, net them today, because I guarantee while I'm away they'll start to ripen and the blackbirds will be in. And when I get back there'll just be a load of stumps left where the strawberries were. These are the 4 blueberries I grow up here. I've got some at home, and they're in a raised bed because blueberries need acidic soil, so in a raised bed you can create your own soil type. So that's what we've done, and I mulched them with acidic coniferous tree chippings that we get delivered here. So they're very healthy. But again, I can't be here for a week, so I'm going to give them a drink, and it's important whenever possible to give them rainwater, not tap water, because tap water will alter their pH, apparently. So I managed to collect a small amount of rainwater off the shed, and the priority on that rainwater is to these blueberries. So a good drink, because right now they're bulking up their fruit. In fact, thinking about it, I ought to net these as well today, because I didn't get any blueberries last year. The birds had a lot, and I'm determined not to let that happen again this year. You look after a plant all year, it's only fair you get a certain percentage of the crop, isn't it? But they look beautiful. I mean, they're ornamental in their own right. This is really good quality muck now. It's been here about 8 or 9 months. Going straight in the compost heap. Really good stuff. Well, that's made a start on putting some sweet corn in. 6 plants, the others are a bit smaller, and around the edge I've just put some multi-sown beetroot, hoping that before the sweet corn gets too big, the beetroot will be away. It's just a matter of trying to squeeze it in where I can, because I don't have a dedicated bed for it this year, but it's one of our staples. So that's made a start. And I love to see the sweet corn grow. I love it just as a plant, let alone as a food. Well, let's now have a look at the whole plot. So starting here with the blackberries, they've been cut back some of the canes so that I can get at them, and I'm looking forward to they're a good cropper. The potatoes, main crop potatoes, are starting to come up, good news. These rhubarb, which I transplanted from someone's garden, have taken a bit of a hit, but then, you know, it's a shock of being transplanted, and I'll look forward to a crop maybe next year. More main crop potatoes over there, and this black currant that I've inherited is going great guns. Right here, as I've mentioned previously, I've got some dwarf French beans, some leeks around the edges, and then the excess tomatoes that I couldn't fit in my greenhouse. So they are tomato marmande, sown on the 17th of February, and I've put them out today, the 19th of May. And that's up to them how they get on. They are meant to be blight resistant, and we do get blight here every year. The 2 courgettes that I've planted in the old compost heaps are doing okay. That Swiss chard is going to seed, but I think I might just chop it to the ground and see if it comes back. The runner beans, which I've planted at the base of the arch, are now just about starting to curl around of their own accord. The other courgettes here aren't looking as good as the ones in the compost heaps, but I think the new growth is coming through, so hopefully they'll be okay. Broad beans are looking good. Lots and lots of flowers. The first early and second early potatoes are going okay. Lots of my red onions have gone to seed, which is a real shame. And I'm watering the garlic frantically, hoping that that won't do the same. Peas are coming on. These are the purple snap pea, magnolia. And then the normal other garden peas are doing fine. And I've got more growing in the greenhouse. Leeks, I've had to replace a few that have been bitten off, but other than that, they're doing fine. That's all the butternut squash in now. Again, I'm a little bit worried about them. They don't look that healthy, but I'm growing spares, so I should be okay. Brassica beds look good. Strawberries, I'm going to net those today because there's lots of strawberry plants or strawberries on them, and I'm worried about the birds for the next week. The apple tree's not looking good. I think I may have lost that. Don't know why. Some beetroot in this bed, which is going okay. Very pleased with my parsnips. Not growing a great deal, but the ones I've got will enjoy. Flower bed. Planted up the sunflowers, Russian or giant Russian or Russian giant. They're not very giant at the moment, but I've put some canes in anticipation that they can grow to 9 to 10 feet. If it reaches the top of that, I'll be very impressed. The pond is looking its very best. The comfrey is starting to take over as it does. Got lilies about to burst, but I just love the blousiness of the whole thing. I love it. And yet still more to get in the ground. Where on earth do I put all this? So much for my planning. Now the raised beds. Some lettuce leaves in there. Corn salad, I think that is. Some spring onions and radish. Lollo Rosso lettuce in here, but more spring onions, which are doing very well. The spinach is finally taking off. That's looking good. I bet that goes to seed before I get to eat any of it, but we'll see. And the blackberry Reuben, lots and lots of flowers, looking good. Cold frames are empty now. And then the lettuce in the back, I've decided that's not growing any bigger simply because it doesn't have the soil. So maybe that's not such a good idea. Last but by no means least, my carrot tubs. Very pleased with those. I've been a bit generous with the seeds and I've got far too many, but at some point I will sit down there and thin them all out. But I'm very pleased. Germination has always been the problem for me, and at least they've germinated, so I'm chuffed to bits. And as we sit here now on the 19th of May, that's how the plot's looking. So far, so good. Well, I've just sown one row of runner beans. I don't know what variety they are. I was given the beans, and last year we grew them and they were very straight, very stringless, lovely bean. I just don't know which variety it is, but that's the first row in, and the second row are growing on in the greenhouse at home. And I also have just planted one row like this of the French climbing bean, and that's cobra. So a really sort of important moment, lots of them on the allotment, when the runner beans go in, the peas go in, the squashes go in. It's a lovely moment, and the weather at the moment is superb, but the only trouble is there's no rain in the forecast. We haven't had any for a month to speak of, and we haven't got any in the forecast for the next few days certainly, so lots of watering, but good to get these in. Well, there's one solution to putting in those extra crops that I couldn't find space for. I've put it on the back end of one of the pea frames. So that's celery called Tango, and then some Lollo Rosso lettuces. And hopefully they won't be eaten before I eat them, but it gets them in the ground. So that's one solution. Just a few more spaces to find. Well, there's me saying how little rain we've had, and I've had to withdraw to the shed. The longer this keeps up, the happier I'll be. And the ground is such dust that it's not really making any difference yet, but it's very welcome nonetheless. Well, that's it for another week. Thanks very much for watching. A special thank you to those that are subscribed, and please hit the like button if you can. Hopefully see you again in another week. Bye for now.